and welcome everyone. I want to thank you for joining us live, and to those of you who will be joining us in the future on our recorded video, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us today. The presentation that you will hear today will be brought to you by Bill Froelich and Josh Stolberg of the Ohio State University's Divided Communities Project, and myself, Linda Warren Seeley. I am the director of the section of dispute resolution for the American Bar Association, and we've joined forces with the Divided Community Project to bring to you today a presentation about how you can submit to us an application to take part in our program, We the People, Strengthening Democratic Engagement to Address Local Civil Unrest and Its Causes. I'm going to turn this over to Bill now, and he will introduce other participants in the project, as well as begin the presentation.
Well, thank you, Linda. And thanks again to those of you on the call and those of you who are watching on the delay. And thanks to Melissa Buckley at the ABA for setting this up. My name is Bill Froelich. I'm the Deputy Director of the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law's Divided Community Project, and I'm in the room with Josh Stolberg, another leader of the Divided Community Project. So you might be wondering, some of you on this call, can you say more, Bill, about the Divided Community Project? Well, the goal of the Divided Community Project is to support communities that seek to transform community tension and division into forward-looking action. The project collates ideas from communities, ideas that have been experienced and tried by elected, appointed, and advocacy groups in communities across the country, and puts them together in our documents, all of which are available on the Divided Community Project's website. We also work with a set of communities across the country, a set of pilot projects to try to implement ideas to strengthen democratic engagement to address local civil unrest and its causes. And you'll hear more about those pilot projects in a little bit. Today, we're going to talk about our new Academy initiative and this partnership with the ABA. On the call, after we introduce the leaders on this page, we'll talk about the Academy goals. We'll then try to address the commitments that we as the ABA section of dispute resolution and the Divided Community Project want to make to the participants in the Academy, as well as our expectations for the participants in the Academy. We'll also discuss application criteria and the timeline, as well as the substance of the Academy. And finally, we'll talk about logistics. Where is it? When is it? Who's paying? And how are you going to get there? So as you can see on this page, there's a set of 7 leaders who are spearheading this Academy initiative on behalf of the Divided Community Project and the ABA section of dispute resolution. From the Divided Community Project, along with myself, Nancy Rogers is a former Attorney General for the state of Ohio. Josh Stolberg, in the room with me, is a colleague here at the Ohio State University's Moritz College of Law and a chair in alternative dispute resolution. And Andrew Thomas is a leader in Sanford, Florida, where he works within the Sanford, Florida government to engage neighborhoods and community members, and was an exceptional asset to the city of Sanford to develop broad-based community collaboration in the aftermath of the Trayvon Martin tragedy. So Linda, I'll turn it over to you briefly to introduce the ABA's members.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Linda Warren Seeley. I'm the director of the section here with the American Bar Association. I've been here for about 2 years, so I'm still relatively new and kind of learning my way around the American Bar Association. But we were thrilled when we were approached by the Divided Communities Project to put together this joint grant application to fund the Academy. The next person I'll introduce is Terry Amsler. Terry is the co-chair of our Public Policy, Consensus Building, and Democracy Committee, which is working with the Divided Community Project to put on the Academy. Terry is an adjunct lecturer at Indiana University School of Public Environmental Affairs. Our other participant is Jessie Lawrence. Jessie is an attorney, a dispute resolution professional, and a public process design consultant. She served, along with Terry, as the co-chair of the ABA Dispute Resolution, Public Policy, Consensus Building, and Democracy Committee.
Well, thanks, Linda. So today's webinar, we hope, is a little bit interactive. And so we're going to ask you to participate using your cell phones by texting DCP1 to a 5-digit number 37607. So just pull out your phone real quick and try to respond to this question. What words come to mind when you consider how diverse community organizations can collaborate in the face of community division? While you're trying to set up this text message protocol, again, just text DCP1 to 37607, then you'll join, then you can respond to the question. There's one more question today, so hopefully you'll join this part of the conversation. While you're texting that, I just want to explain that Linda indicated that there's significant collaboration between the ABA and the Divided Community Project to put on this Academy. The Academy is funded by the American Arbitration Association International Center for Dispute Resolution Foundation. I know that's a mouthful, but AAA ICDR, as we call it, is a great resource and a great supporter of the Divided Community Project and the ABA in putting on this Academy initiative. So if you haven't texted in, oh, great. As you have.
Oh.
Wonderful. So we see some responses. Trust, organizations, community. And the larger words represent those of you where multiple people have texted in the same response. So trust and organizations come to mind when you consider how diverse community organizations can collaborate. Mediation, understanding, resources, action. Thanks to those of you who participated in that. We'll try to capture this information and use it on our website on the Academy initiative down the road. Thanks again for participating.
Fabulous.
So, Linda, I'll turn it back to you if you want to discuss briefly the program goals for the Academy.
I would be glad to, Bill. Thank you. So for those of you who are interested in participating in the Academy, when we were putting together the grant application to AAA ICDR, we talked a lot about what was it that we wanted the program to be able to deliver to those of you who do get a chance to participate in the Academy. So first of all, what we want to accomplish, and our goal is to strengthen the ability of communities to engage in conflict resolution related planning. Every community has their own unique set of problems and issues. And it's important, if you are working towards building those relationships that you need to have in place to do conflict resolution, that you have the opportunity to plan appropriately, to develop your capacity building, and to develop specific skill sets for each participant so that they can prepare for, address, and respond to local policies or events that polarize communities. And as I said, every community is going to be different. Every community is going to come to the table with different strengths and weaknesses. And we want to help you to be able to identify those strengths and work on those weaknesses. Support is another key program goal. Here, what we're hoping to help you do is develop a local core leadership to serve as a convener group as a source for information, collaborative planning, and engagement whenever a community anticipates or expects to have to respond to events that divide it. So having that core group of leadership of people who are stakeholders in the community and who are representative of the different segments within your community who are going to have to provide this kind of response. And finally, to provide to this core group of conveners and stakeholders the opportunity for your team to take what you learn at the Academy, the programming materials, and to create and shape the community-specific initiatives that are going to work for you. So it's strengthen, support, and provide to those of you who are going to participate in your conveners in helping you to get to where you're able, the point where you're able to deal with conflict in a constructive and peaceful fashion.
Thanks, Linda. Well, as I try to advance the slides, sorry about that. Okay, so our commitments and our ask of the organizations or the communities that attend and apply for the Academy. First, on behalf of the Divided Community Project and the ABA, we commit to the participants in the Academy that we're going to communicate and collaborate with you, not just to train at the Academy, but also through a series of webinars that will take place likely before and after the Academy, and then to work with you in a collaborative manner after the Academy to implement what you've learned at the Academy session in March of 2019. We also anticipate providing mentorship opportunities. And these mentorship opportunities will tie back to our existing pilot projects. As I mentioned earlier, we have 5 pilot projects across the country. One in one in Columbus, Ohio, one in Rochester, New York, one in Orlando, Florida, and 2 in the San Francisco Bay Area, including the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center. And I know Michelle Vilches and one of her colleagues are on this call today, so thank you for joining us. These 4 initiatives are convened by different organizations. One, the Columbus Community Trust, is a set of community volunteers with support from a bar, the Columbus Bar Association, that have convened to develop trust and resilience in the community. 2 others, the Rochester Center for Dispute Settlement, the Rochester Project, and the San Mateo Project, are convened by community dispute resolution centers. Another, in San Leandro, California, is convened by a group of advocates and volunteers in the community. And the 5th pilot project is hosted by the Valencia Peace and Justice Institute at Valencia College in Orlando, and with support and partnership from the City of Orlando and the Orlando Police Department. We hope that you, as new communities in this Academy initiative, will be able to learn from what these 5 pilot projects have done. And we anticipate that individuals from those pilot projects will be able to mentor and work with the Academy communities perhaps at, and certainly following the Academy in March of 2019. So our ask of the of the communities that apply to the Academy initiative is that those communities, those core leadership groups, actually engage in broad-based community planning following the Academy. So we hope that 5 communities from across the country send 4 to 7 what we call core leaders, perhaps an individual from a nonprofit organization, perhaps someone from the city manager's office, perhaps a faith leader, perhaps an advocate, perhaps a deputy police chief, to the Academy, and then begin broad-based community planning after March of 2019. Just to highlight what some of this might look like very briefly, I want to illustrate the work of 2 of our pilot projects. In Columbus, the Columbus Community Trust is working to develop community trust and resilience in advance of civil unrest. You see on the right-hand side of your screen a schema or a flow chart of the work that the group is trying to undertake. They're trying to listen to the community about the divisions and try to support the community to develop trust and resilience and processes to address those community divisions. Another group, the Rochester's Community Response Team, hosted by the Rochester Center for Dispute Settlement and a local newspaper, has developed a set of bylaws that actually are a plan in advance of civil unrest. You see the draft bylaws on the left-hand side of your screen. The Rochester group is a group of volunteers hosted by this Center for Dispute Settlement and the newspaper that have come together to do broad-based community engagement and planning in advance of civil unrest. So those are two examples of the type of work we hope Academy participants will engage in after the training academy. So we're going to turn now to another interactive question for all of you. So there are many of you on this call and webinar, and we want to know, what are the possible benefits of an academy that you see for your community? And while people are texting in, I'll just note, if you do have general questions, you might hold them till the end of the conversation, or you can type them in the webinar chat, and we'll try to respond to them as appropriate. After we take a look at the questions that you text in, we're going to talk briefly about the substance of the academy. What will you learn? What will it look like? And then we're going to talk about application criteria and the application timeline. So great. What are the benefits? Trust building, creating some glue across broad groups, dialogue opportunities, finding space for planning.
I love that one. I love that one.
Absolutely. Often difficult to find space for planning. Helping official leaders understand their disconnection from the community. Thank you for sharing this great diverse list of what you hope, what the possible benefits of the Academy might be. Certainly, as we continue to solidify and make concrete the Academy agenda, we will try to incorporate your hoped or your anticipated benefits throughout the Academy program. So I'm going to turn now, I'm going to scoot over to my colleague Josh Stolberg, who is spearheading the Academy agenda. And so I'll be out of the picture for a minute. Excuse me.
Thank you, Bill and Linda, and welcome everybody. I'm humbled by the responses regarding the potential benefits of the program and hope that we're in a position to deliver on that. As some of you know, the Divine Community Project was born of a desire of persons who have had experience in dealing with differences to try to share experiences in terms of lessons learned, either because it worked well or it didn't work and we can learn from our mistakes, to people who are on the front lines dealing with situations ranging from Ferguson to Sanford to Dallas, Texas, to any college campus in the United States. And the way we've framed the Academy to some extent reflects the way in which the vision is that we'd begin an evening with a facilitated conversation of persons who had direct experience in dealing with responding to significant both protests, rallies, gatherings in Sanford, Florida, for persons who had to deal with the aftermath of the tragic shooting at the Pulse Club in Orlando, and invite and we plan to have persons, police officers, interveners, city government officials who participate in those to, through a facilitated dialogue, share their experiences, their concerns in a candid, constructive way, and then tap into the experiences of persons who have gathered for the Academy to share experiences perhaps from their own community. But the idea is that that would be the base on which we then move the program ahead. On Monday morning, we pictured this as 3 different targets. Monday morning is going to focus on what happens when a matter erupts in one's community and one simply has to deal with it. What is the skill set of dispute resolution? dispute resolution skills that enable city government officials, local leaders, neighborhood association leaders, faith leaders to respond constructively to and helpfully to fellow citizens in dealing with the dynamics of a polarizing event. As our colleague shared with us, not only does one have to respond to things that erupt, but sometimes people, city officials, leaders, and others, and savvy communities take the initiative and have the opportunity to plan for certain events. So as Andrew Thomas reminded us, city governments plan for what happens in a hurricane or what happens in a healthcare crisis. What does a community do to plan for civil unrest? And we're going to devote the afternoon to what we've learned is few communities actually do that. And at the project, we've tried to develop conversations, learn lessons from people who have had experience in doing it. And we're going to devote Monday afternoon to try to share with persons the lessons that we have learned and then learn from those present about constructive ways that a community, through a convener group, typically a broad-based convener group of both government officials and leaders from business, professional communities, neighborhood associations, faith communities, how can that group plan for and try to anticipate matters that might impact a community? And then following up on that on Tuesday morning, sort of building on the notion, through the consistent theme here is strengthening local capacity. And what we want to do on Tuesday morning is to focus on various strategies for sustaining and building local resiliency, greater resiliency that persons have, and then the skill set for, if we want to have a conversation, say over immigration issues or gun policy events, and you have a room full of 350 people, how do you run that meeting? And what are the skill sets involved? And then we're going to close by giving persons an opportunity in their own groups from their various communities to try to digest and integrate what they have with local needs, develop a plan so that when we all leave early Tuesday afternoon, everybody has a game plan for going forward. If this works like other programs, those of us who are responsible for putting it together and leading it will learn much more than those who came, but hopefully it will be a rewarding experience for all of us.
Thank you so much, Josh, for that description. And Linda, we're going to turn it back to you to start discussing goals, and hopefully we don't, or application criteria. Yeah, hopefully we don't get dropped again.
I hope not. So, what is it that we are looking for from you as a potential participant in the Academy? So our application criteria includes one particular criteria that's very important to us, and that is diversity. Diversity is, of course, fundamental to any fair and effective engagement. No question about that. We want to encourage you, as you put together your participant team members, make sure that those team members reflect the range of your community's geography, size, and demographics. Every community is going to be different, and every community is going to have a different set of stakeholders. Having recently moved from Memphis to the East Coast, I was pretty taken aback by how important religious leaders are in the Memphis community as opposed to what I've seen on the East Coast. So please bear in mind that you need to make sure that you have all of the stakeholders from all of the communities within your area at the table and participating. That is a key component to any application from a community to participate in the Academy. We're going to want to see what efforts you made, who did you reach out to, and who are you ultimately looking at to be a part of your participant team.
Thank you, Linda.
Bill?
So the second criteria is commitment. We described the commitment, our expectation briefly a little bit earlier, but we want to be certain that we make the most out of this opportunity. So group size. Applicant communities should identify 4 to 7 core leaders who are committed to attending the entirety of the National Academy beginning on March 3rd in the evening and moving through 1 or 2 p.m. on Wednesday or Tuesday, March 5th of 2019. In essence, because the Academy will take place in Chicago, as Linda describes, this allows participants to fly from almost anywhere in the country to Chicago on Sunday, stay for the Academy Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and be home on Tuesday evening. Second commitment is operating protocols in the community. Applicants should state how this core leadership group, as we're calling it, of 4 to 7 individuals, will begin or sustain convening its broad-based community planning efforts to identify and address issues that polarize or divide the community. So we understand there might be organizations that are broad-based coalitions that already exist in your community. And perhaps this is a layer, an additional component for that organization or entity to take on. Alternatively, you might be forming a new group in your community, a new group of core leaders to convene broad-based community planning efforts. But we want to encourage both types of applications because we think it will be fruitful to the conversation. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, post-academy activities. Applicants must commit to continued collaboration with the Divided Community Project and the ABA following the Academy in order to implement the initiatives aimed at addressing community polarization, civil unrest, and its causes. So those are our 3 commitments that we anticipate for Academy participants will be able to make. Linda, I'll turn it back to you for the third application criteria.
Thank you, Bill. So the third application criteria is need. We are asking you as applicants to identify your perception of whatever the issue is that's polarizing your home community. We want you to describe the dynamics and maybe even some of the history in your community about what brought you to the table, what brought you to putting together this particular application, and then offer your prognosis as to what the next issues might be facing your community that will continue to divide your citizenry. And we want to point out that it's not necessarily just a need in terms of resources, although every community could certainly benefit from additional resources, and we anticipate that that is something that we will provide to you. But there are other needs that come into play, and sometimes there's not the political will or the political capital that would be necessary to address these polarizing issues. And it would be very helpful to us as we create the programmatic processes that we're going to talk to you about at the Academy to know what's your history and what is the political will and capital that exists behind your need. So we want you to not just think in terms of the community needs resources, but what else does it need? And what are those barriers that have kept y'all in a polarizing position in your community? Bill?
Thank you, Linda. So a few more logistics and then we'll take Q&A. So we've gone over the application criteria. Let's look at the timeline. Today, August 14th, we're participating on our 45-minute webinar. And again, thanks to those of you who texted in using the Poll Everywhere software. Our deadline for applications is September 14th, 2018, 1 month from today. If you go to the Academy website, which is in the bottom of every one of these slides, you'll see much of this information that's posted on this PowerPoint. We'll also post the video there later today. But it's at that site where you'll be able to submit your preliminary application. In that application, then we will consider, as the Divided Community Project and the ABA group work together between September 15th and November 1st to work with hosts to make sure they are committed to the project and to identify which communities, which core leadership groups will attend the Academy. We anticipate making that announcement no later than November 15th. Linda?
Sure. So where will this happen? We will be using the main offices of the American Bar Association at 321 North Clark Street in downtown Chicago, easily accessible via either O'Hare or Midway Airport. In beautiful downtown Chicago, we'll be very close to the new Chicago Riverwalk, which we hope everyone will have an opportunity to enjoy. We will start on the evening of Sunday, March the 3rd. Everyone will be invited to dinner that evening and a lunchtime. Then we'll go through lunchtime on Tuesday. Meals will be provided while you are at the Academy. Thank you to our funder, who will also pick up the costs for travel, meals, and other logistical costs, which will be reimbursed through the Academy. The ABA will secure a hotel room block for attendees so that we can get the best possible price for our hotels and make sure that where you stay is in walking distance to the ABA in our downtown office. All of that will be sent out to you once you have completed the application process and we have selected the participants.
And I just want to reiterate our appreciation as the Divided Community Project and the section of dispute resolution for the American Arbitration Association, ICDR Foundation's support, tremendous support to put on this academy so that the core leadership groups from communities across the country don't have to pay travel costs, don't have to pay hotel accommodations. All that we are asking that you pay with is your time and commitment to broad-based community planning following the Academy. So we want to make it as accessible as possible for communities and leaders in the communities that are on this call. So without, I think, our last slide, so without further ado, I have not seen any questions pop up on the webinar. Oh, actually, there is one, a Q&A from Frank Dukes. So I'll just put it up. He has to go to another meeting. Biggest question is whether this would be relevant for our community, which has a major division about the role of policing itself. Given this weekend just passed, where 1,000 police with heavy weapons and tank-like vehicles were everywhere, and helicopter sounds without cease endured all weekend, can we bring the concerns to this? And my immediate reaction to Frank's question, and Frank, I believe, is based in Charlottesville, Virginia, is that we encourage diverse communities with as diverse sets of concerns and divisions to apply to the Academy so that our conversations are richer. This is one component of the diversity criteria. So we may hear from, I know that there was some interest from a few smaller communities in Michigan of populations of 50,000 that have stayed out of the news recently, whereas Charlottesville, a similar sized community, is in the news regularly. I think that type of diversity will add richness and flavor to the conversation and our learning at the Academy. Linda or Josh, if you have a different response, I defer to you as well.
No, we encourage these types of conversations and discussions. And as I indicated earlier, when we were talking about some of the criteria, every community is going to face different challenges and have different sets of concerns. And we want to encourage you to bring those to the table. Let's talk about what we can do and how we can structure some processes and procedures that you can put in place to address those concerns.
I'd simply like to endorse what Linda and Bill said. It's just this kind of situation that warrants and needs not needs, warrants whatever kind of insights and contributions one can make. And if we fail, we ought to fail for trying, not to stay away from it. So I would clearly invite persons in communities who have those kinds of challenges of just getting people to talk to one another to consider and work with us to figure out how to get a group together.
Great. As I roll back into the frame, thank you for that question, Frank. Are there any other questions, either in the chat box, in the question function? Maybe someone has raised their hand. I'm new to Zoom, so I'm still trying to figure this out myself. Or someone on the phone line is welcome to come with the call. Well,
I don't see anything on the chat function right now, so.
Well, it's not our intent to hold you all on the line on this, well, gorgeous afternoon here in Columbus, Ohio. So if there are no further questions, I just want to express the Divided Community Project's thanks to the ABA for setting up the logistics for this webinar, and again to the AAA ICDR Foundation for supporting this project. And of course, to all of you who have joined us today, and those of you who will review this webinar online. Should you have further questions, please go to the Academy website, and don't hesitate to email me at froelich.28@osu.edu. Thank you all for your time today. Linda, I'll leave the last word to you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Josh, for participating in this webinar. I also want to offer my thanks and great appreciation to the staff of the Section of Dispute Resolution, Melissa Buckley and Brandon Rhodes-Moore, who have been so very helpful. Melissa helped us get the Zoom set up, and I think Brandon helped her set us up on Facebook, so we were Facebook streaming live. Again, please feel free to reach out to Bill, to myself at the American Bar Association, if you have any questions or concerns, and thank you so very much for listening today.
Thank you. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing your applications.
Absolutely.